Hello everybody, this is Graeme, and today I'm going to be looking at Lord of the Rings Adventure to Mount Doom. Now I must say I tend to buy all the Lord of the Rings games, not because I particularly love the IP, but because my wife does. Although she loves all sorts of games, she will always want to play a Lord of the Rings game, which means this was an instant buy for me, even though I only have a very surface knowledge of this franchise. Now the game uses a roll and move mechanism, and before you turn off the video, I should say it's probably not what you're expecting. My biggest grievance against roll and move is the lack of choice. Well, in this game they tried to rectify that, and for the most part, I think they succeeded. On a player's turn, they're going to be rolling 4 dice, picking 2 of them, then adding a third one back to the pool, re-rolling and pick up another 2. So each round you're going to be picking a total of 4 dice, 2 encounter dice and 2 movement dice. Then you're going to be activating the encounters and move the fellowship with those dice. Now it sounds pretty straightforward, and I was a little leery after reading the rules, but I did want to give it the benefit of the doubt. So, will this game be revered like the hero of Middle-earth, or should it just be tossed into Mount Doom? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and I'll come back with my final thoughts on Lord of the Rings Adventure to Mount Doom. Here is Lord of the Rings Adventure to Mount Doom setup. All the fellowship starts at Rivendell, and all the characters are used no matter the player count. The Uruk-hai chieftain goes on the board, and the rest of them go off to the side. The Witch King goes on their spot, and the Nazgul go off to that side. The oldest player gets a Gandalf card at random and places it face up beside them. The youngest player takes the Boromir card. The encounter cards are split by their names and then shuffled. And to start, take the 7 Lothlorien cards and deal out 6 of them. The first and last are always dealt face down, and the middle 4 are face up. The 7th card is discarded without looking at it. Each of the location decks are the same, 7 cards, one of which will always be discarded face down. The dice are placed off to one side. Each of the colored dice match one of the fellowship. The black dice are the encounter dice, and the white die is only used for combat. The ring token goes on its starting position, and finally the Treebeard and Gandalf tokens are placed to one side along with the dice board. Now this is a completely co-op game. All the players will be working together to get the ring bearer to the orange-colored Mount Doom space to finish the game. You will lose the game if the one ring would be moved on or past the dark heart on the courage track, or if the last Nazgul is moved to Minas Morgul. On a player's turn, they will roll 2 black dice plus 2 of the multicolored dice of their choice. You'll always roll 4 dice. From the 4 dice just rolled, choose 1 black die and 1 colored die and place them in the first 2 slots of the dice board. Then select 1 additional multicolored die and add it to your pool. So now you have the 2 leftover dice from the first roll, a black die and a multicolored die, plus 1 new multicolored die, and roll the 3 of those. From those 3, you must take 1 black die and choose 1 of the multicolored dice and place them again, black first, on the dice board. Next, you're going to resolve the dice. They go from top to bottom, left to right. The black dice refer to the encounter track, and there are 2 types of cards: adversary cards, which have a red symbol on them, and friend cards, which have a green symbol on them. The first black die will activate the card in that slot. If the card is face down, you flip it over. If you activate a friend card, you just take that friend card. It can be used by anybody on their turn, but is placed in front of the active player. Each friend card can only be used once, and once they're used, they're discarded. Now if you activate an adversary card, read what it says and perform the actions immediately. There are special adversary cards that deal with battle, and I'll get into battle a bit later. If you activate an encounter die and the space is empty, you perform whatever actions print on the board. Next, you activate the fellowship die that is beneath the encounter die. You must move that figure that corresponds to that color exact number of spaces. If it is the ring bearer and the die would take it beyond the end of the stage, only move the ring bearer to the end of that stage. This is the only time you're going to be moving a figure less than what the die says. If you end up on a space with an event, you just do the event. Either lower your 1 ring marker by 1 space, or add a Nazgul to an open spot in Minas Morgul. If any of the fellowship, other than the ring bearer, ends their movement exactly on a destination space of one of the stages of the journey, move the 1 ring marker up 1 space. If you pass over the destination space, nothing happens. But when the ring bearer reaches the stage's destination, the stage ends. If you move the ring bearer the exact number of spaces to reach the destination, draw the top card of the Gandalf deck. If you exceed the stage destination with the ring bearer will still stop on the destination but does not receive a Gandalf card, but instead you must discard the top Gandalf card from the deck. When a stage ends, all the figures stay where they are, but the remaining encounter cards are discarded and replaced with the next deck. Again, deal out 6 cards as described earlier and discard the 7th. Now let's quickly talk about battles. If you activated an encounter card with this symbol, a battle happens. First, you check for the fellowship support for the ring bearer. All the fellowship figures that are on the same space or ahead of the ring bearer who have not yet passed the stage destination are part of this battle. You roll the battle die. If the symbol matches one of the fellowship who are supporting the ring bearer, you've won the battle. If you roll a symbol for a fellowship not supporting the ring bearer, again, those are going to be the ones either behind the ring bearer or be on that stage's destination, then you've lost the battle. You'll also lose the battle if you roll the Sauron symbol. The last symbol on the die is the Gandalf symbol. If the group discards one Gandalf card, then you've won the battle. If you don't discard a Gandalf card, then you've lost the battle. Some of the adversary cards are going to be a group, for example, fighting all the Uruk-hai located in Isengard. In that case, you're going to have the number of battles equal to the number of Uruk-hai in Isengard. Whenever you lose a battle, the adversary card will tell you the consequences. Now, there are slightly different rules for when the ring bearer reaches Mount Doom, as they must progress alone, but I'm not going to go over that in detail. Now, the party wins if the ring bearer reaches the final destination in Mount Doom, but your party will lose if you have to move the one ring past the last circle on the cards track, or if you have to place the ninth and final Nazgul in the space in Minas Morgul. So that's how you play. Let's get back to see what I thought about the Lord of the Rings Adventure to Mount Doom. So, theme and components. For the theme, for someone like me, I thought it worked surprisingly well. I sort of know Lord of the Rings. I mean, I read the book trilogy back in university, which is longer now than I care to admit, and I have seen the films, but that's it. I don't know much more than what my foggy memory can remember. Now, I recognize the place names and most of the characters in the game, and it seems to follow what I would think of as the main plot point of the story. I also thought they did a good job through some of the mechanisms, like trying to keep the party together. Characters that are lagging behind or zoomed out way in front of you can't help you in the battle. The mechanisms that you're doing, rolling dice and picking who is moving, makes little thematic sense, but the overall sense of the game is that it's fairly thematic. For the components, they do kind of remind me of a mass market game. Their standees, the card quality is decent. I do like the art on the board and on the cards. I would say that the components are average. Nothing stands out as being particularly good or bad. I'm not going to complain nor praise the components. On to the gameplay. I must say that when I first read the rules, I thought, a roll and move game? And you have to move what the die value is? Oh boy, this doesn't bode well. But you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. There is more to the game than just roll the die and move your character. Often you do have choices. Yes, some choices make more sense than others. Trying to keep your party together or having a character land on the stage destination is probably the best thing to do. After you've rolled your dice, you're looking at the number of things. Which one of the encounter dice is best at this moment? What about the movement dice? Yes, having that 6 is really tempting, but maybe it puts that player, the character beyond the stage end. So maybe I should take the lower value die. And when picking the extra die to add to the second roll, again, not a huge depth of strategy here, but there is a good choice to be made. For the cooperation nature of the game, I'm not sure there really is much. The gameplay is the same whether you're playing solo or playing with the full complement of players. You do not have a character to play. You are free to move any member of the Fellowship on your turn. And even the cards that you gain, the Gandalf and the Ally cards, they're shared amongst all the players and can be used by anyone on their turn. I'm not sure why they just didn't have you put in the general pool of available cards instead of you holding it in front of you. And yes, there is table talk of which dice to roll and which die to pick, but I'm not sure it benefits from having the extra players. That being said, as a welcoming or family game, I think that's where this co-op is really good. The concepts are pretty easy to grasp. There are some areas, obviously bad moves, but the good moves are just that, they're good. So it really doesn't matter which of the good options you take. And I like that. It was not overly complex, but the game is still challenging. We always seem to be going along pretty good, then things just start to fall apart and when we have a few bad die rolls. And that's the other part of this game. The game is super lucky, with the dice rolls with very little mitigation. Again, to keep the complexity down, I'm okay with that. Having too many options can overwhelm some people, so this game made that choice not to do it, to kind of keep it simplified. And the game lasts a good amount of time, 45 minutes to an hour, although we often played less because we didn't make it all the way, but it's a good length of time and doesn't overstay its welcome. But it's long enough to make you feel like you did make some progression. Maybe not all the way to Mount Doom, but you've probably got through a good first couple stages. So, would I recommend this game? If you're looking for a cooperative game that's good for families, or even if you're looking for something a little less complex during your gaming, and you like the Lord of the Rings, then this definitely would be one I recommend. I thought the components were decent enough. I like the main mechanisms of the game, rolling the 4 dice, picking one encounter, one movement, adding a die, and re-rolling and choosing the next 2 dice. Although there was not a huge decision tree, there was still some thought into what rolling and picking you were doing. Something that I actually wasn't expecting. I like that the game switched it up for the last stage of the game. It was nothing vastly different, but it was tied into the theme. I like that it felt I could get a lot of people to play this. It had some very familiar mechanisms, that roll and move, but offered up some choices to make it a bit more interesting. I like the allies and adversaries. Being able to keep the allies until the right time to use them was fun. And the adversaries definitely got harder as the game went on. Now my problems with the game come down to more of a hobby game perspective. I do wish that there was some more differentiation between the players. It didn't matter how many people played, the gameplay was identical. I would have enjoyed having some special ability that only I could use during the game. I was also not a big fan of the high levels of randomness. Again, for what the game is going for, I understand. But from the way that I like to play, it was on the high end of my tolerance for randomness. So it's definitely a negative for me, but it might not be a negative for you. And speaking of randomness, I also do wish that there were more cards. Each stage you're going to be using 6 out of the 7 cards. I'd have liked to see a few more cards. Maybe a way to make the game easier or harder through those cards. But overall, I'm going to give this game a 7 out of 10 in the Dice Tower seal of approval. This is not going to be a game that goes into my regular rotation in my collection, but I'm going to hold on to it because I think it offers a game that has a familiar feeling with a lot of people, both in theme and the roll and move, but adds a little something more to elevate it just to that next level. And that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.